Hey, what's up, guys? Shuckleking here, bringing you WBE Season 6, Week 5 Power Rankings. I'm doing them with the man. We've been doing it for a couple weeks now. Introduce yourself.
Hey, guys. Ogalbina here. Yeah, Week 5, still going strong. I think we're approaching halfway. If it's not 10 weeks, it's 12. So we're getting close to halfway regardless. I'm excited to jump into the game this week.
I think it's 10 weeks.
Is it 10? Smart guys. Thank God.
Yeah, it's 10 weeks. Yeah, I don't like leagues more than 10 weeks.
No, I've noticed in Gen 8 too, people have finally started universally change that, which is so much nicer. I love it. It's so much nicer.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, this week, I feel like this week, if you told me what the matchups were and just told me who was going to win, I think I would have predicted every single game correctly. I don't think there was really any surprising update or upset with all the games that were played. Do you think there were any interesting games in particular to highlight or anything that looked weird?
Not at all, really. Honestly, not really. A lot of the upper echelon coaches too, power rankings wise, played a lot of the lower guys too. So it was pretty telegraphed. I think this guy's gonna win. I think this guy's gonna lose this week, and it all pretty much ended up going that way. To be completely honest, it was pretty straightforward this whole week.
Exactly. Maybe outside of Chimpact Uzi, it could have been a toss up between the two. Yeah, But otherwise it was pretty much predicted who was going to win. And as you'll see in our prior rankings, I believe our first 9 were all the same. Yeah, which was kind of funny.
I think this is a momentous occasion because we never agree on any of these, so that was fine. I was super happy with that. The lower part, we disagree within 3 spots of each other, but the top half of the video, picture perfect. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense. And I think from our between 9 and 10 and below, I think there's a pretty big gap in terms of the talent at this point. But you never know. Someone in that bottom 7 could rise to the occasion. So we will see. Yeah, but one of those games that was probably not in the top echelon. 2, you would definitely say of the weaker coaches this season was the game with Magnitude versus Fruitberries. We got Magnitude hasn't had a win yet, but I think he's had pretty decent showings. I think he only had -8 differential after 4 games, and then we have Fruitberries, who has a win but hasn't looked that great otherwise this season.
Yeah, no, 100%. So going into this game, I believe I totally forgot to write down the differential, but Steve ended up winning this one.
3-0, I believe.
3-0? Okay, cool. I haven't written down for every other one. I'm like, oh, cool. The first game we got to talk about, I don't have the differential written down.
It's better than me.
Going into the game, some things I noticed just on matchup, Fruitberries had -2 switch-ins to Shandy. At all. His switch-in was going into his Ditto and hoping it clicked a fire move, Flash Fire. Though I will say, unfortunately, Steve didn't utilize that all too well, didn't really get it in on the right turns. And Fruitberries had that Toxic Protect him on top, which was making me kind of pull my hair out, because throughout the whole game, Steve was very, really trying to pivot around it, which is completely fair. He's really trying to make it to where his things he wanted didn't get toxic, and he wasn't getting worn down too hard. But then I was thinking, wait, you have a Reuniclus, and I understand Reuniclus is probably the win con in the game, so I don't want it to take chip, but you're going up against Hitmontop, which is legitimately probably the best matchup for a Reuniclus to have ever, especially because it's in Tim. It showed Toxic Protect in the game. I don't remember how early he showed Fake Out, but then he showed Fake Out, which means he's probably fighting Stab, and even if he's not, his best way of hitting you is going to be Sucker Punch or something for a good clean 25%. So if he ever had an opportunity to set up with the Reunion in that early game, which was honestly a phenomenal win con against Fruitberry's team, it was against that Hitmontop. Unfortunately, he didn't utilize it, which has unfortunately been kind of the name of the game with Steve this season, especially with Reunion. He's had great Reunion matchups as of recently, but he doesn't ever really find the right time to bring it in. Which is unfortunate. And he didn't even have to use the setup. He could have just used it to throw off a big free psychic, going into the game. I will say I liked Steve's idea in the no item Kamo because he got demolished on matchup by Lolowak. I thought Lolowak was really good. I don't know if I would have went Flame Charge just because the thing is so slow. I like the sub idea potentially. Maybe sub 3 attacks or sub SD, sub Pain Split or something like that would have been really, really clutch this game. But regardless, I think that the no item Kamo was definitely a really, really clutch item right there. So that was obviously really good. This was a really interesting game though. I can't say, like, as much as I'm glad Steve finally grabbed his first win, I can't say he played phenomenally. Like, I can't be like, yes, this is where he, this was his breakout game. I honestly wasn't too impressed. I just feel like, again, in the nice way possible, I say this, he didn't play as bad as Fruitberries, if that makes, any sense going into it. What were your thoughts though?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, first I appreciate that Steve had a game under 10 minutes, which is definitely nice. After
on Showdown
every
too?
single game.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Showdown. Makes it easier. It's not as nice to watch, but it's understandable. But
For us it is.
Makes it easier to watch. But yeah, no, Fruitberries, it's a rough matchup. Just primarily because I just don't like Fruitberries' team in general. And behind Break of the Fourth Wall, I was helping Steve mock battle in this game, and it was impossible to build with Fruitberries' team, so I'm not really too surprised. I thought his best win condition was maybe getting a Trick Room up with a Hatu or Clefable, and then going ham with a Marowak. But Steve brought a cool bring, the no item Como that basically shut down any Marowak, and honestly, I don't think he really had too much chance to win otherwise, maybe outside of Gliscopod doing damage, but probably Gliscopod was it was not Boots, it was Life Orb, which hits hard, but if rocks are up, then the Gliscopod's going to get worn down so quickly. And if you're relying on Leech Life to get some HP back, Como is just a great defensive answer to Gliscopod as well. So yeah, Fruitberries really didn't have an answer to Chandelure either. He played around it pretty well though. But yeah, it was definitely unfortunate. And there's not too much that I could say because I didn't see Fruitberries' side of the battle at this point yet. So yeah, Steve got the win. He's definitely a little bit higher in our power rankings. You have him at 10, I have him at 11. So he rose a little bit. So good for Steve. And hopefully he can get some momentum going into the season. Now at least all the coaches have one win, which is cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. And he's kind of getting out of his early season gauntlet where he's playing everybody at the top of the league and has to do all that, which definitely wasn't fun for him.
Oh yeah, this was a little bit more of a winnable game than the last couple weeks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But going on to the next game, James Baek versus Nexus. These are probably two among my favorite coaches. Watching this season, Nexus is so funny, and James Baek has had a really good insights. And I didn't know anything about his content before this season, so definitely a good watch. I'd recommend. But James, he had a really really cool team this week. He brought a lot of heat, and I don't know if he's brought this much heat in general this season, but he brought a lot of really, really cool sets. And he basically also predicted Nexus's team exactly during his team builder. But he had Rock Blast, Conkeldurr, knowing that Nexus has run Subtoxic Salazzle in the past. Even though Conkeldurr was Flame Orb anyway, so he wasn't going to get Toxic. It was just a cool tech to get around the Salazzle. He brought Mudshot Reboot for the Salazzle, so really, really cool stuff there. And James right away, turn one, he had a lot of momentum, just U-turning with Reboot. And Reboot's been doing pretty good for him between last game and this game. But he U-turned with the Reboot, and then got a double switch again as Conkeldurr onto the Weavile switching. So, Conkeldurr just went in this matchup because Nexus did not bring, Gardevoir or, Driftblim or something that could at least sub-one handle Conkeldurr. His only resisted Drain Punch was Salazzle, which
yikes,
probably doesn't live a close combat in the Mach Punch from Flame Orb for sure. He didn't have close combat, but it definitely would. I'm pretty sure it would be able to take it unless we're very defensive. But yeah, no, James did really well there. His Frost Blast at the middle of the battle just basically killed Heliolisk for no reason. I don't get why Nexus sacked his Heliolisk to the Frost Blast for no reason. But he also got Eggy to do pretty well, James Baek. He was able to get a Trick Room up multiple times throughout the game because the Keldeo also didn't have Icy Wind to hit the Exeggutor. So I guess Nexus thought it wasn't big of a threat as it was, but he was able to kill the Salazzle with Stomping Tantrum, which was super cool. He was able, at the very end, to kill the Rillaboom as well and get a lot of chip damage off on the Weavile. So yeah, James played this game really, really well. He had a couple of pretty aggressive plays when he thought that he could afford it. If the aggressive play didn't work out, it wasn't that big of a loss of resources for James, but if it did work out, it would have been great. Like he was able to get a Toxic with his Rotom on a Keldeo at some point. So if it was like a sub combined Keldeo, it would basically do nothing. So yeah, James played it super, super well. Impressive win. And he jumped up a couple spots in both our power rankings. You had him at 5 last week. I had him at 6. So he's up at 5. So really solidifying his spot in the league, which is pretty impressive for a guy that's nothing new for VGC content.
Yeah, definitely not singles and singles draft too. Like it's a pretty big jump from VGC and stuff like that. Though I do love to see really quick on James is like that VGC side with his really, really intricate EV spread. That's something I love in draft. I love seeing, really complex spreads like that. And he does a great job at that. And I don't know. It's just like a small appreciation because like besides Emvee and Chimp at times, not many people are doing that in the league. And it's just, one of the small things I like about draft. But on to Nexus. Something I've noticed about Nexus really heavy because like you said, he's someone I really enjoy watching too. He's a lot of fun to watch. But something I've noticed when he plays is he's very, very aggressive, and I think something that would really, really benefit him is learning how to make better middle ground plays, if that makes any sense. He's very all or nothing, definitely. And he often makes plays that put him in a really garbage position in the early game, to where no matter how well he plays in the end game, he can never put himself in a position to win later on. Like one that ended up working out for him, kind of. It didn't work out for him in like the sense like he got a good turn out of it, but there was a play earlier in the game where he was in with his Weavile. He was in with something. It wasn't Weavile, but the Frostlass was out, and he said, "I'm gonna go hard Weavile on the Frostlass," which I thought was very interesting because the potential of Wisp was pretty big there, and Weavile was so ridiculously good in that game. I was a little surprised when I saw him go hard into it, just because I feel like there are better pivots on the team for a Frostlass. It's a Frostlass. It's not the scariest thing in the world, in all honesty. Especially if you have a bulkier Keldeo or something like that can pivot into it. You have a Salazzle that can pivot in, take a hit, and throw off a big hit afterwards. Like there's options for him to threaten it out and not potentially lose a great win con against James' really, really slow team. Like Beta Weavile did phenomenal in that endgame. If he could just eliminate Conk, it honestly could have just won. And then gotten a little bit chip on Corvi, obviously. But the Corvi was a different issue. Another thing I noticed is, like you said, him giving up so much health and basically sacking off his Heliolisk was so tough. Because he had nothing to kill the Corviknight at that point in the game. I think it's just realizing that... I mean, Slazzle ended up going down, I believe, as well. But... without those two members, he didn't have a reliable way of ever really killing that Corviknight, and I think he just has to kind of realize his end game a little bit more and realize I need this Pokemon in order to beat this. If I don't have this, then this Pokemon walls my entire team, and that's kind of the position he was in against the Corviknight in that really awful, like painful exchange of him clicking rocks and Fire Punch for 25% on the Corvi as it just pressure stalled him out. It was when he had Roar too. It was tough. It was a tough time to watch. But regardless, and another thing I do want to mention too, in Nexus side is I feel like there could be better utilization of the Rillaboom. I think he's brought in SD Life Orb every week. I think one week he brought Miracle Seed, but other than that, he's been SD every single week. And granted, he hasn't had great Rillaboom matchups. Like Corvi is like pretty damn good stop to it. The best answer. Yeah, Corvi's a pretty good stop to it, but then maybe utilize it in a different way. Maybe go with the U-turn set and try and grab momentum with a nice Volturn core of your Heliolisk plus your Rillaboom, and get some hazards up and things like that. Chip down a team another way besides having like this Mon clicks button because it's offensive. Like there's other ways of wearing down fatter builds like this, which is something I think he could definitely really benefit from in this. In this specific instance.
I feel like the last couple of weeks I just haven't really liked Nexus's teams a whole lot. Sometimes it also forces him to go unnecessarily
aggro,
or necessarily aggressive because he doesn't have a lot of switch-ins. Like again, like he didn't have anything for Conk.
Yeah,
but he had things on the team that could at least not force Conkeldurr to go for close combat or Drain Punch for free. Like literally, he could just click Drain Punch.
Versus the whole team and 2-hit KO everything.
Yeah, even 2-hit KO the Draudigon.
Yeah, which is, again, very very interesting. But other than that, it's just he positioned his endgame pretty awful. Again, I don't know. It's just the early game blunders where he plays really aggressive and gets put in a bad spot. And he realized it too afterwards. He's like, I shouldn't have done that. You got to slow down when you're playing, unfortunately. And which is hard to do on Wi-Fi when you're playing in a Showdown League or, just playing on ladder. It's a lot easier to kind of relax and sit back. That's something I 100% do on Wi-Fi myself. But you just kind of have to sit back, realize your end game, and maybe know when to be aggressive and know when to play a little bit safer. If that makes sense. But
yeah, I think that's definitely fair.
Next up, though, we have
we got a Cbad versus Vizually.
Yeah. So in this game, let me see. Oh, that's one of my notes I have on my piece of paper. So Vizually ended up winning this game, and this was another very, very interesting one. Viz has had a phenomenal season, by the way, which I've actually been pleasantly surprised. I didn't really have too much background knowledge on Vizually. I played him once in a draft league in Gen 7 before this, in a league war before. And that was a good game, and then I've played him a couple times in Little Cup, which is obviously very, very different than what we're talking about here. But Definitely. He's performed really, really well this season. He's been a very, very pleasant surprise in this match in particular, with a very, very unconventional team. But one thing in particular, he really took advantage of the fact that Cbad 150% under-prepped for the Palisand, because Palisand was sitting in front of the entire team, which was absolutely hilarious. And it was funny because it was a super fat Palisand, but he had no defensive pivots into it either. He brought nothing to switch into the Palisand, so it just sat there and started chipping things down throughout the whole game. It was a sight to behold, and I like that he kind of stepped away from the giant hyper offense approach that he's been going the last couple weeks, where he's gone screens, rotom into setup. I like that he had a little bit more of a defensive backbone in this game in particular, which was really, really clutch for his team. And another thing I wanted to mention, let's see. It was definitely a good matchup for him as well. And I think another thing that Viz has done really well this season is utilize the Scrafty. When Cbad decided to let the Whimsicott go so early, Scrafty was such a big, big issue for his team in order to break it, because he couldn't ever get into anything that actually initially broke it, like a hard switch into it, because track obviously gets blown back by a drain punch, and Gengar doesn't want to take a knockoff, that's for sure. So the utilization of his lower tier mods this week in particular was really, really, really nice, because no Whimsicott basically meant nothing was really ever beating Palisand plus Scrafty if visually positioned correctly, and I think he did a really good job on it. But I do think that a big majority of this game was kind of predicated on Cbad having a really subpar build. I know he had a tough matchup, but I'm sure you'll talk about it. But yeah, his build definitely irked me a little bit. It wasn't the greatest approch to this matchup in my personal opinion. But what were your thoughts on Cbad versus Viz?
Yeah, so seeing his team initially, not necessarily getting too much context on what Vizually actually had. It seemed like he had a cool concept and had kind of a game plan. It was Orb, Gengar, and Jolly banded track out. He brought Jolly this week, so there you go. And that it was complemented with orbital webs, more Pico, just to remove hazards, Whimsicott to get Tailwinds up, and Cloistered to set up screens. And the Cloister set was pretty cool, but the problem with this team was Gengar and Trakia were great, but they're really the only two offensive mons that can actually do pretty significant damage, and he had basically 4 support mons. So if Gengar and Tracheon each didn't get multiple kills, then this wasn't going to go good for Cbad. And the fact that he went with this approach, and one of the best answers to Tracheon in the game is Palisand, just because it resists Stone Edge and close combat and even Earthquake. Bounces. It just wasn't a logical set to bring in this game. And also because Vizually has Alakazam, that could just stop this hyper offensive team fairly easily, just because he could always bring in Alakazam, live a hit even if sticky webs are up, and just kill Gengar, just kill Terrakion. So, and obviously that's a great trade if you get that right. So it was pretty tough to see. And again, there was a situation early on in the game where the Orbital was in the game, and took a lot of damage from a Dragalge Sludge Wave. And it forced the Dragalge up because he didn't know, Vizually didn't know if Cbad had Psychic on his Orbital, and Cbad goes for the Roost again, or recover, as gives a free switch in to the Palisand, which you can't do anything to, as opposed to like getting offensive initiative with this team. So similar to last week where like he just continuously roosted with the Skarmory, like even if he wasn't at, like, he could have recovered, like that was fine, but he just lost a lot of initiative. And it just happened again this week, and it was just so annoying because you have to have initiative as much as possible.
Yeah, especially if you bring like an HO build, you need to keep up offensive momentum as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, and he was just on the back foot a lot of this game because the Whimsicott was worn down like really quickly because that was like the switch into the Palisand. But that got worn down and died pretty early on in the game. Yeah, so Cbad was just on the back foot like a lot of the game, and I don't even know if he really like necessarily realized that he was on the back foot. And a side note, like the Cloister was weird. I don't know why Cloister didn't have a skill link because I let Vizually set up bulk ups.
Yeah, and
get substitutes.
Another thing on the Cloister, really quick before I want to like jump in really quick.
Yeah,
I think that the screens, like, it was a cool set. I think I love fat Cloisters and like, you know, using it different ways than just clicking the smash button and hoping it wins. But I think a spiking set would have been so much better in this game. I don't like the utilization of screens with zero setup. I'm not a big fan of screens with no setup. And he was Life Orb Gengar, fair. And then he was banned Track, right? So in that instance, what are you trying to live? Like, what are you benefiting from those screens in that sense? I figured getting up Spike to where you could, if you get up 2 spikes, so you can 2-hit KO Palisand with Bandit EQ on the switch in, and then you can make an aggressive double as he's forced out into, you know, his, you know, Earthquake switch in and stuff like that. Would have been a little bit more beneficial than setting up screens so your Terrakion can live like one hit from Scrafty or something like that, in my opinion at least.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I believe Visualize removal is Rotom, Fan, and Charizard. And like they're pretty tough brings between like Orbital, Gengar, and
Terrakion. You got the Track, yeah. So like if you like, especially like Spikes, or you can even be like a teleport set as well, getting your Tracks for free on those mons that might want to even defog and stuff like that. Like there was definitely better options for the Cloister, I felt like, in this matchup.
Yeah, so definitely a weird bring by Cbad. You had drop a couple spots. I actually rose him up a couple spots. Kind of seems weird, but I think a lot of coaches underneath him played worse. So that's basically why I have Cbad up at 10.
Better, yeah. He's the lesser two evils, but yeah. No, I get you. It was definitely a very fun game to watch, though. Fun game to watch. Next up, though, is Feintattacks versus Moet. Do you want to jump into that one?
Yeah. So Moet. Congrats, Moet. He has a new sponsor.
The Twix that made me laugh so hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. Congrats. You gotta make the money. So good work for you, man.
He said something like for this diabetes, and I said I feel that, and I liked it immediately. I was ready to go. That I was born for this moment. I knew I was doing these PRs for a minute. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's great. But yeah. So he brought the Marini yet again, which was cool. He made a couple changes to his team. He has the Hatterene now. Maybe I could slightly pull up what changes he has on his team. So he dropped Gyarados and it has Hatterene. Yeah, that's the only change. But I do like the Hatterene. Gyarados is pretty cool too. But Hatterene like just went in this matchup. It was really tough for Feint to do much about. So it was definitely a good plan to I like this plan of leading Scarf Volcarona. Because Volcarona is such a big threat to Quiverdance, but he was Scarf this week. He U-turns, brings in Marini, which is Miltank is probably the switch in, which it was. He got up a Toxic Spike, and because Feint only has Scizor as removal, hopefully he can keep up T-Spikes and just wear a lot of the team down so where Hatterene can just set up Calm Minds and win the game. So it was a pretty decent build there. Moet has pretty good answers for Scizor. He has Seismitoad, he has Marini, even could just sit there and Scald and get burns. Galley could have Fire Punch, Volcarona is there, Duraludon. Scizor can't do much too. So really the only thing that Scizor beat in this game was Hatterene. So that was a really good planning and build by Moet. The Gallade set that Moet brought, if he had Fire Punch, 6-0'd.
100%.
It was that crazy of a build, similar to Nexus, where his fighting resist was Salazzle. His fighting resist was Scizor, yeah, which isn't that great of a fighting resist. So definitely a weird bring there. It was good that Fade killed the Gallade with a dual wing beat Scizor. That was a pretty cool bring, but outside of that, like, Mo was just in control this whole game and played pretty safe with the Hatterene towards the end. Like, he didn't Calm Mind when Kyurem switched in. And he could have, like, won the game there, but I guess he was scatting out if the Kyurem had Flash Cannon as, like, a last move because it wasn't revealed. I think it was Agent Power, Kyurem at the very end. But, yeah, no, he played pretty safe. Scarf Volcarona did really well in this matchup. Figured out it was Scarf Ninetales. And, yeah, Moet was able to win the game at that point once he was able to weaken down the team and get T-Spikes up. So, pretty impressive game by Moet. Yeah. Very straightforward.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward, and I like that out of a Moet game. He didn't bring, like, some crazy gimmick this week, and he, had a much, like, more, not much
Scarf
easier
Volcarona is
it's definitely different, yeah. It's definitely different,
it's
but he didn't pull up with the stockpile Marini this week, which was good to see. Good to see for all of us. I was happy to not see that one. Moet played very, very well. But I do think that Feintattacks, definitely didn't play the best, and it was also a very big. You kind of mentioned him and like compared him to Nexus in the sense that he didn't have fighting resist, but I think he also kind of had the same problem as Nexus in the sense that he kind of didn't have the correct sacks in the early game, which left him very much so wide open into in the end game. So one was the Glade set, which was definitely a really cool set. I like the Power Punch idea and stuff like that. But there was a point where I think he was in front of the Glade, and it like Drain Punch broke the sub, and then Feintattacks was like, I'm gonna sub again, as he like Power Punch and broke the sub or something like that, which meant it was just a +1 Glade sitting there, and it was like, yeah, exactly. Damn, I gotta give up a Pokemon. Like, this is pretty bad. So unfortunately, he ended up having to give up the Miltank, I believe is what he ended up sacking. At least he ended up sacking the Miltank really early in the game. And that, as soon as I saw that, as soon as I saw that, I said, okay, Volk wins. Like, Volk should just click Fire Blast in the end game and kind of pick things off once T-Spikes, really go to town, stuff like that, and start chipping some things down. So that really was unfortunate. And then because of that, in turn, Volk was in, and he was like, oh no, I have to pick a sack to the Volcarona because my Thick Fat Mom that Walled is gone now. Let me go into my Scizor. And Scizor dying meant Hat won immediately too. Like, Hat won the game immediately too once it got in a free position to set up a Calm Mind. So it was just kind of a very, very poor utilization of his sacks and poor positioning and things like that, which is unfortunate. I think Moet was definitely much, much better prepared for this game. Even with the endgame Volk miss, he was, in a pretty commanding position throughout. And, Feint just didn't have the pieces, one, in his build, and two, just, in the way that he preserved mods and things like that to deal with Moet's offense there at the end, just at all.
Yeah.
But there's not much else to say besides that to this game, though. This was a really straightforward game. Again, once I saw the Miltank go down, I was like, I think this game's kind of over. Like, I don't really see a way that Feint pulls this one back, unfortunately. With
exactly.
Volk plus Hat just demolished him once the Miltank went down.
Yeah, and I think Feint knew how big of a threat Gallade was going to be, and like just did a prep for it.
Yeah, he has a Kofag on the team, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that would have been a good check to that set. That would have been really good. So. I forget the fourth move. I don't remember if he's Knock.
And he dropped the Talonflame, but I was gonna say he used to have Talonflame.
I was gonna say Knock. Was he Knock as a fourth move in Glade? I'm completely forgetting. I know he was Power Punch, Drain Punch, Leaf Blade. I don't remember if the last was Knock.
For the Quagsire.
Yeah, but regardless, it still kind of bounces off Kofag because it's such a bulky mod. So, like...
exactly. Yeah.
Colbert Kofag would have been a nice stop to that set, but regardless, it happens. Moet had a great game plan in that game, and I think he just was much, much better prepared to, really beat down Feint's, bulkier core and kind of just set up an endgame where Scarf Volk could win, and I thought that was a great bring. I thought Scarf Volk was really, really cool against this team, especially with a Miltank sitting on the back, not forcing a Quiver Dance. Like a Quiver Dance set was really cool utilization of it in that specific matchup.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, next we have Chimpact versus Uzi, which was a very fun game to watch, actually. This is probably, like, the game that I was, like you said earlier, that I was like, ooh, this one can go either way this week.
Exactly, yeah.
Which was really cool. I really liked Chimp's build this week. Chimp's build was great. I like the screens HO approach that Chimp brought this week, and the Gara bring was obviously really, really good as well. I really like the sub bounce Gara, and he had a great game plan going into it, and he knew that he had to reliably beat like a Tangrowth that was designed to beat any Gyarados, which might be carrying Protect or something like that, obviously to stop the bounce turns. He said, I know I need to get a Toxic off on the Tangrowth, which he was able to do in the early game, which really showed to pay dividends and let him play a lot safer around it as well. I do think the Shockwave Tang was a really cool bring though, by Uzi. Yeah. So he was definitely pretty prepared for the Gyarados, but getting the Toxic off was very, very nice for him because he could just sub bounce all over the Tangrowth and be in a really, really good spot. There was one turn though, where I believe Gara set up a sub in front of the Tangrowth as it was getting weakened by Toxic and things like that. And Uzi had already shown Shockwave, and Chimp wasn't really trying to get behind a sub to stay behind a sub. It was more so like, I'm going to get this thing chipped so that I can, bounce and pick it off or something like that, or pick off something else on the team. And he clicked Giga Drain. When we saw, based on prior damage, that because of how spadef fat the Gara was, that it didn't actually break the sub, which is definitely a very interesting really play by Uzi. And I think that, kind of when you're playing against a team like this and when your whole team's getting toxic, just like it did against Emvee the week prior, you have to be really smart with how you utilize your turns and things like that, because you can be put pretty far on the back foot if that ends up happening. There was another turn in the game, though, where, Chimp could have, he subbed down in front of the Tangrowth at one point. I believe it was definitely in range, too. It was like a +1 or 2 bounce. It was 100% range, even if he was Fizz Death. But he subbed down to get a little bit more toxic damage, which is unfortunate because what that sub did is it put him in a range of health where the next sub he couldn't throw up another sub, which made it super obvious that he had to go for the bounce up turn, which Uzi made a good play. He pivoted out into the Copperajah so that he could take the bounce and whirlwind him out, which is obviously really smart. I think honestly Chimp would have just won the game if he just clicked bounce the turn prior instead of subbing, because then either the Tangrowth goes down or he has to pivot into Copperajah that turn and take that, and it definitely didn't take that plus Waterfall, and it might have even been in range of a Waterfall at that point. I forget the exact, spread.
Yeah, I think it would have.
Yeah, so at that point, I think the game was actually, like, legitimately over, because, unless he called him, because he would have had to gone, like, maybe he could have gone Hydra, baited another bounce, and then gone into Copperajah, but he at least had to give up a Pokemon there. So, Chimp didn't really gain anything out of that exchange, really, besides good chip on the Copperajah, which was obviously really nice, and some toxic chip, after regen on the Tangrowth, which was unfortunate. But he was able to utilize the Gyarados pretty well, other than that one turn, which I think he could have been a little bit more optimal with his subbing and his bouncing turns and stuff like that, and it was a very good bring. But regardless, he played it pretty well. He pivoted really well in that end game. And he really set up to where he could, had just enough pieces to end there. I'm surprised no Scully by, by Uzi. I thought Scully was phenomenal in that matchup, so I thought it was very, very interesting that he didn't end up bringing it, but it was a very good game regardless. I'm sure you'll jump into more on, like, Uzi's side and stuff like that here.
If you just look at Chimp's team, like Earthquake plus Megahorn just did a lot of damage in general to maybe like Rock Slide or Poison Jab, I guess, to hit the Gyarados. So that would have been nice for Uzi. Chimp made a lot of changes to his team that just seem like they're pretty good. Like, he doesn't have like a lot of triple typings anymore.
We're here for that.
Yeah, so it's definitely a plus. So good for Chimp. I think he might be in the top 8, being a 2 and 3 at this point, because I don't think he lost his games like by that much differential. So, it's gonna be an interesting fight for like the 7 or 8 seeds in this. But Uzi, and I think this brings Uzi to 1 and 4. So I think he's definitely someone that could contend to take one of those top 8 slots. And I think we have Uzi, we have mid 8. So I think we still both think that Uzi has a lot of potential. He's just had some pretty tough opponents and some pretty tough end games, because I think Uzi 100% could have won that game at the end. I think he kind of choked a little bit, but early on in the game, like, again, maybe it's like a trend this week, but Chimp didn't have a whole lot for the Passimian outside of the Sigalith, which died very early on in the game. It got knocked off. It lost a lot of HP to the point where it couldn't really do much at that point. So that was pretty cool, especially because it has Defiance. So if like a Gyarados comes in, banded +1, or no, is it +2?
What
Defiant gives +1 or +2 attack.
Oh, Defiant gives you +2. So if it intimidated, that would have been essentially.
Banded it would have been intimidated then +2, so it would have been +1 banded. So that would have done a lot of damage to like even a Gyarados, even at like the bulky set that it was. So, and it probably would have outsped. I don't know if it would have 2KO'd, maybe after like rocks, but yeah, that would have done a lot of damage there. But Chimp was able to like mitigate the Passimian fairly well. At some point, Uzi like just had to sack Passimian, which was the right play, even though it did really well. Chimp just had a lot of speed because it wasn't like Scarf Passimian or something. Scarf probably wouldn't have been that strong because it was banded. It was pretty expendable because Chimp brought a pretty offensive, fast team this week, which is definitely a change. So that's cool to see. Yeah, I think Uzi played a Tangrowth pretty well. It was a cool bring with the Shockwave, and Shockwave was also kind of weird. I guess he had to bring it over, say, like Rock Slide, because if Gyarados Intimidate, there's definitely a chance that Rock Slide wouldn't break a substitute. And I think Uzi expected Chimp to have sub Gyarados, which was definitely a play. But Shockwave also invites in the Zeraora to come in, especially because it was Shuckleberry. So you can, like, he was able to Volt Absorb. So there was a point where he Giga Drained, you mentioned before, and that definitely put Uzi in the back foot. But at the same time, Chimp could have just gone into Zeraora, which was already, like, fairly low. It would have been a lot higher of an HP, which also would have been annoying. I think that trade-off there probably was worth it, but I can understand like Uzi's thought process for going for the Giga there. But yeah, like I think he played around the Gyarados fairly well, like predicting him to go for the bounce and going into Caparage, roaring it out when it was at +2 speed. So that was cool. Really, the only play that I don't agree with Uzi was he had to sack the. No, it was towards the end, so he sacked Passimian to Lucario to get Specs Espeon in, which was great, and that did a lot of damage to the Klefki. And then eventually was able to defog with the Rotom, but the very end, the Zeraora was in, and Uzi has to sack the Hydreigon, which was fine. But then he brought in, instead of bringing in Scarfed Rotom Heat versus a weakened Zeraora that dies to Overheat, Lucario, which dies to Overheat, and Klefki, which dies to Overheat. He brings an Espeon and that dies to a knockoff. Like, even if he didn't show knockoff, like, you can't just do that play unless if you're Colbur. So that just didn't make any sense whatsoever. He could have won the game there with the Rotom. Lucario revenge kills with extreme speed, but you also have Espeon in the back, in theory, that could have killed the Lucario. Like, I forget what he had left, but Uzi could have, if Lucario came in to like E-speed the Rotom afterwards, he could have sacked something, brought in the Espeon, Psychicked, and that probably would have 2-KO'd the Klefki, if not O-Code, because it was pretty low HP. He had Tangrowth left, so he could have sacked the Tangrowth to the Lucario, got in the Espeon, Psychicked, and then probably Overheat to win the game. So Chimp could have played around that potentially, but Uzi just didn't play that end game well.
Use the calc.
Unfortunate. Yeah, utilize the calc. And I think it was just the heat of the moment. I think he knew that knockoff would have killed. I guess he just didn't think of it. It might have been just an in-game blunder. It happens, but just unfortunate it had to end that way, because I think it could have been Uzi's win.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just, again, kind of realizing that it definitely on Wi-Fi it's tougher too.
Exactly. There's always so much time.
It's much more in the moment type stuff, and you overlook some stuff. But yeah, for sure, Rotom was definitely the safest play, regardless, even if he didn't have knock. In case he got like a T-Bolt Bear or a T-Bolt Crit or something like that, like Rotom was very definitely really kind of the safer option, provided he, I guess, doesn't miss an Overheat, which wouldn't be fun either.
Not missing.
But at least then you have something to blame it on.
Yep, sure. So next game this week was Callum and Auto. Yeah, I don't know. This was weird. Auto played this not great. He won the game. I think we both still have him at number 3. I definitely thought about dropping him a little bit, but I had him and Viz like flip flop from like
20 minutes when I was doing my list. It was tough.
Exactly. It could have gone either way, but I think Auto showed pretty good consistency this whole season. And he still won the game, even if it came down to a 1 out of 3 chance of losing at the end. But it worked out for him. Auto played very safe, which was fine. And the thing was, Callum knew that Auto's been bringing really bulky teams because he has to, because Auto has a pretty bulky team that just pivots and tries to get a lot of kills with Aegislash and Stormy, which is fine. Auto played really safe, and it also helped that the Vikavolt was not offensive, and because Auto didn't have electric answer on the team, Vikavolt, if it was offensive, would have been a problem, but it was defensive. Side account, I don't understand this Iron Defense Vikavolt. It's just not good. It's not good. He's gotta stop.
He's opened up my eyes. I didn't even know it got Iron Defense before this league. I'll be honest.
Yeah, we did realize, because it's just not something we would consider. It's just too you just get toxic. Then what do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, you switch out and get aromatherapy, but then what do you accomplish with the Iron Defense? So just weird. Just stop bringing that set. But yeah, no, Auto played pretty safe until he had to sack his Mawile to Porygon-Z, which was bound to happen eventually, because Porygon-Z just went in. Even though he has an Aegislash, Dark Pulse was just something that could easily to a KO. So it was kind of risky for Auto to do that. So I guess the Mawile made sense, sure. I don't think he really had much of a better answer.
No, not at all.
But Auto did make the one aggressive play that he needed to, was bringing in the Aegislash in on a Porygon-Z, and then risking that the Porygon-Z would not flinch with Dark Pulse, and was able to kill. So I think that was a risk you have to make with Auto to kill the Porygon-Z, is hoping you don't get flinched by the Porygon-Z's Dark Pulse. And once he did that, he was in pretty good position to win. He was able to play pretty safe. He didn't get a Toxic off in the Vikavolt, which would have been nice, because he got it earlier on in the game, but Shrieking went for the aromatherapy. It was able to get a Toxic later on in the game in the Vikavolt. That would have been nice if Auto was able to do that, but it was weird at the end of the game that he sacked the Galarian Weezing, just because you would have think that's a pretty decent answer to the Grimmsnarl, which Callum didn't bring in the entire game, so there has to be a reason why Callum wasn't bringing in the Grimmsnarl. It had to be a late game win condition. So it came down to where Auto first got pretty lucky with getting confusions and getting the Serena full confused when it went for an aromatherapy. Definitely could have been a chance for Auto to lose that game if Callum got an aromatherapy off. And then at the end, he basically had to rely on Grimmsnarl not going for Darkest Lariat on the Aegislash, and Aegislash killing with Iron Head, which Auto said was a bad play. He miscounted sleep turns, but it was the only play he could make. He couldn't go into Arcanine at the very end of the game just because he would have lost to Bulk Up.
Yeah,
he had to go into Aegislash and hope the 1 out of 3 chance didn't happen. So Auto did that, maybe a little confusing or haphazardly, but it worked out and he got the win. Played pretty safe. But just something to watch out for future opponents.
Yeah.
To capitalize on the bulk. And if Auto's going to keep playing this way, it's definitely something to take advantage of. Even though he's going to be a very offensive Aegislash score for Life Orb, Stormy, and then 4 pivots. That's basically what he's brought all season.
Yeah, so you touched on a lot of the things. One thing I did want to touch on Callum's side is, obviously you said Auto made that really aggressive play in getting in his Aegislash, and then he was not flinched by it, so he was able to pick it off with the close combat. I think letting the PZ die was not a very good idea on Callum's part.
Not at all.
It was so ridiculously good in that game in particular, and it was, as Callum was, kind of saying in his thing, and in his title, I play bulky teams. Yes, but said bulky team got demolished by that Pokemon that you let go down very, very early. And provided you get a little bit of chip on the Aegislash, it legitimately just won the game. There was nothing that Auto could have really done to stop that PZ once he got that chip on the Aegislash to put it in range of Dark Pulse. He was in so much better position. And I know he didn't have great switches to Aegislash. Obviously, Beta Aegislash did very, very well in that game. But regardless, I don't know if that was the sack in particular in that instance in the game. I think he would have really, really been able to dent Otto's team to where he couldn't really make a comeback. But it's also kind of a thing I think he may have been getting a little bit impatient because playing fatter and, bulkier builds like that can get a little bit grueling.
Definitely.
When you're sitting in front of the same mon and seeing the same switch and stuff like that, especially with how safe that Otto was able to play, which was a very good build by Otto. It was similar to like the Emvee-esque builds that we've had this season where he could play very safe just because he had such a good defensive matchup. But the only difference is Emvee usually has been able to cover all bases with his teams, and Otto could not cover the Porygon-Z. Unfortunately, Assault Vest Mawile isn't the best check. You switch in like maybe 1 or 2 times. You take 87 million from a tri-attack. That's Porygon-Z. So that was his way of breaking through. When you play fatter builds, you have to identify your way of punching a hole in your opponent's team. And that was it. So I think that was very, very interesting. Callum didn't play super awful, though, other than that.
No.
There was a play in the game that Otto made that I didn't really agree with. I believe he was in... It was when he tried to sack off his Weezing.
Weezing?
It ended up working out super well for him because Callum made a pretty smart double. I honestly, I could 100% see myself making the same exact play and being super mad that Otto didn't switch afterwards. Because the flag... the Strange Team into the Flygon double was kind of a bad play that really ended up working out. And
exactly.
I think that Otto was in such a bad spot. If you let Weezing go down, he was in such a bad spot versus not only the bulk up Grimmsnarl, like you said, but also the Flygon. Flygon did really well with Earth Power in that endgame. It really did do pretty solid against the rest of his team. So I think he would have been in a really bad spot and honestly maybe potentially just lost the game at that point if he, didn't end up making that double and getting the Flygon in. It would have been different if he was like, I'm calling the Flygon double right now, and he stayed in the Strange Team. It would have been really aggressive, and maybe not to my taste because he was too aggressive, but at least like the thought process would have been there. But I don't really agree with that play in particular. And then obviously the end game wasn't very clean, like you said with Callum. Him getting off that aromatherapy would have been really, really nice with this arena. But unfortunately, that's good old Confusion, our second favorite next to Freeze. Really, really fun mechanic. I don't think that Callum played super awful this game. I don't think the only big blunder that I really thought kind of did him in was letting the PC go down so early, just because of how good it was in that game.
Yeah, and he almost pulled it back. So
yeah, 100%.
Definitely have to give him credit for that. But next game, and honestly, these last 2 games are
pretty quick.
We're not close whatsoever. Yeah,
not at all. This one's gonna.
And they're the top 2 in our power rankings versus basically are close to bottom 2. I have Thatsa at 14, but yeah, these were blowouts. They were to be expected.
Yeah, so this one was the first one we're talking about is going to be Pokeaim versus Patty. Pokeaim won this game 4-0, but it was a very convincing 4-0. Like it was a 4-0, but it felt like it was worse. He was never not in a position where he was in a bad
gonna
spot.
Lose.
Yeah. So something I obviously noticed on team preview, and I'm surprised Patty didn't notice this, especially in his building process. He does not have a ground resist on his team. Not a single ground resist, and he's going up against sand offense. In my head, I'm thinking that forces maybe. In my mind, I was thinking Silvally Grass is probably pretty good here. Or maybe even something weird like Silvally Flying. Regardless, you might be weak to the rock slides.
What was the Weezing? Was the Weezing not?
The Weezing was, but we'll talk about the only issue is he threw away the Weezing like super early in the game, which was really unfortunate for him. But I still thought having at least a backup check, because Weezing isn't the most reliable check to things like that. And if you decided to be Mold Breaker Drill because you don't have a ground resist, then that's not a reliable check in itself as well. So he ended up bringing Silvally Water, which was maybe potentially like a Darm check or something like that, and it at least threatens those offensive that sand offense if you get the opportunity to. But he was still 2-hit KO'd by the Earthquake on the Excadrill. So that was definitely very interesting in prep. You did say, obviously, he did have, Levitate, defensive Weezing, which is really good in stopping the sand. But he gave up, and this is kind of, proving me wrong in what I said in the post-draft power rankings, where I was like, I don't see the point of Dougie. He's definitely shown me a light a little bit, because he's been using Dougie really well to break through for Excadrill. And him getting what, 90% off with his Dougie on the Weezing in order to break through for that extra drill, just kill everything, was so big. As soon as I saw that damage, it was a lot like in some of the other games. As soon as I saw like that go down, much like in Feintattacks game when you let Milton go down, I was like, oh, drill wins. Like drill should just win this game like immediately. He gets up an SD, or he just comes in switch and clicks Earthquake into a KO or something. Like he's in a pretty good spot. So Dougie forcing damage on that Weezing was really, really huge. It basically just kind of set up in a game where there was no way Patty could really kind of set up and stop that drill as long as Sand was something in the back. Another thing I noticed with Patty, I'm sure you'll talk about, he really likes Jolteon. He really likes Jolteon. He brings it a lot. And I love Jolteon Gen 7. It's not my favorite Mon in Gen 8. And I think maybe swapping that Mon out for something more serviceable, like an actual bulky water that has reliable recovery and can kind of fend off maybe a drill a little bit better, and like Milo or something like that, it's been really beneficial this matchup. But this game was very straightforward. It was Patty didn't have a ground resist. He let his Weezing go down and then drill one, which is kind of what I expected to happen. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot. And like that I was gonna say, and like just Patty, like I saw Patty's team builder, and like so like where do I have Patty ranked this week? I have 15, and say like Cbad. Okay, so Cbad I have like 10. So like the difference, like so Cbad's team wasn't good, but it was a cool strategy. Like
he had an idea for an end game.
Yeah, he had an idea for an end game that probably wasn't gonna happen. It was just not realistic. But with Patty's like build, like watching his team builder, like I knew he wasn't gonna win. Like there was no way Patty was gonna win that game after I saw his team builder. And like even irregardless of he was playing Joey, he's probably a better player than Patty in general, like irregardless of what the team is. But yeah, like there just wasn't firepower. So Sub Calm Mind, the Necrozma. Now like with nothing to hit the Slowbro. So like Necrozma kind of has a weird matchup, especially because there's sand, and because you have to rely on Moonlight a lot with Necrozma, like it's tough. So I could definitely see like Patty having like a rough matchup with the Necrozma, but like Solid Calm Mind just didn't make any sense when you can't touch the Slowbro. You gotta think of something a little bit more creative than that. Maybe just like a defensive set to take on the Excadrill or something if you want to have something maybe to take on Excadrill. What was it? It was Shuck and Cineorb, so I guess that's your ground resist. That kind of seems suspect. Jolteon, like, yeah, I love Jolteon too, but if you're going up against Excadrill and Dugtrio, that kind of seems like a weird matchup there. Maybe like, I don't know, Braviary. He hasn't brought Braviary to one game. At least it's immune to the Earthquake. I don't know. It could have maybe done something. Get superpower. So
close combat, even better.
Oh, I guess close combat. Yeah. So when did it get that? Did they get it for
Gen 8? It was Gen 8, yeah. When everything that had superpower got close combat. Now superpower can be used on anything anymore.
Yeah, that would have been a lot nicer. Maybe Scarfed or Life Orb, Bruised, whatever. It doesn't matter. Game's already over. So Volley Water, I don't know. Why? And the answer for why is it outspeeds outspeeds Excadrill out of sand, I guess.
That and Drill, yeah. It was like I pressure offensive. I pressure the sand offense, but again, I think
if you get to a KO'd, what does that accomplish? Like I don't know. He has Melodic. And, like, sure, you don't outspeed, but you take hits. And you take hits from a lot of things on the team. Like, it even takes hits from, like, Specs. Noivern, like, pretty okay. Even if you don't invest in Spadef, it probably takes 2 Dracos. So,
just
like...
Scald, Ice Beam, Toxic Recovery did really well in the matchup. Like, really well in the matchup. It was really hard for Pokeaim to beat it.
Yeah, I don't know how Joey deals with that if he brings that set. Like, yeah, really not, like, I guess...
Especially if you're struggling to switch into Darm as well. Like, it was an interesting build.
It made no sense. Weezing was fine. Mienshao, I just hate Drain Punch Mienshao. Just bring, like, close combat, reckless high jump kick. Just do damage. Like, there is nothing to do damage on this team. Like, so how are you going to win that game? And your team's not bulky enough. Weezing doesn't have recovery. Silvally doesn't have recovery. Incineroar doesn't have recovery. They're all Necrozma. They're all going to get worn down. There was no way he was going to... Like, it wasn't offensive enough and it wasn't bulky enough to win. It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really nothing else to say.
Yep, it was very, very straightforward. As the next game's not as straightforward, but it's a good one to end off on. I'm excited.
I know you're excited. So we got Emvee rolling yet again. Like, probably most convincing game to win again. Like, yeah, like I don't see him ever losing the number 1 spot in the power rankings unless he loses multiple games. Like, and I knew his team was going to be good because I basically drafted like a slightly more offensive version of his team, and he has a little bit more of a bulkier version of the team that I had, and like it did well for me. And like Emvee's a good player, so it just makes that it did well. Like, he went for rocks turn 1, which is great because you don't know what Thatsa's gonna bring. He's gonna bring some crazy crap.
Lots of Sash Pokemon. He covered half the team by getting up rocks.
Exactly, yeah. And then probably Mammothine plus Lantern. Like, he probably didn't even need to bring anything else. I probably could have just won the game right there. Yeah.
Unless he got unlucky on some attractors. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Like the Mimikyu, I don't know. Like, in theory it was cool, but it did nothing to Skuntank. Like Willow, Drain Punch, what was it? Shadow Sneak 4th move, probably.
Yeah, I don't think he actually showed it, but
yeah, I think with Shadow Sneak. Yeah, but yeah, like it just didn't make. There's just nothing there. Like, Eddie had Heal Bell, so as soon as Emvee showed Heal Bell, that's a good win. And that's did he have rocks? Yeah, I think he did have T-Tar rocks. He just never got them up. So yeah. There was no way he wasn't gonna 6-0 this game.
Yeah, it was
There's really not much to say.
Yeah, there's not much to talk about besides Emvee knows what he's doing, and Ness doesn't really know what he's doing. It literally just boils down to Emvee brought a really, once again for the 5th week in a row now, a really, really good defensive build that covered all bases that his opponent could, possibly bring, and it was made a lot easier on him when he got to play 2 Mons with Attract. When you're playing against arguably the hottest coach in the league, who is obviously just on an absolute kill streak right now, demolishing the league. It's not the best idea to bring the gimmicks and stuff like that. And I understand this is the entertainment league, but it's a little more entertaining to watch competitive games as opposed to that one. That was a game. Yeah, it was. There's not really much to say. I honestly I was excited to talk about it, but then I got into it and it's just like you can't bring Attract Pokemon versus someone who's been playing this format for a very long time and understands how, the process into going into winning and covers all bases in a build, and then you bring stuff like that. It's just not gonna work out well for you, unfortunately. So another 6-0 buyback for Emvee and padding the differential stat. 5-0 plus 23 is looking pretty clean. He's on pace to get to plus 46 right now, which is pretty good. I think him and Joey are looking to lock down that 1 and 2 seed. I don't know if they have a bye in WBE. I don't think they do because it's only 8 seeds.
No, it's top 8, so probably not.
Yeah, so really, really interesting game to end off the week. That was actually the last game I watched too, because I was like, this is gonna be interesting. Let's get some popcorn ready, and we'll see what we can do. But yeah. So good time. I
think that's it for this week. So. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting table in the top half. Honestly, not too surprised. Maybe outside of... Well, I didn't really know Vizually too much going into it. But he's definitely... he has content out there that shows he's a good player. So probably outside of, James Baek, I'm not really too surprised of, the top teams in this league so far. Callum's also impressed. We have him at 9, but he's done very well this season. But otherwise, I'm not too surprised with how the season's been going so far.
Yeah, those bottom 2 spots are up for grabs. Top 6 is chilling at 4 and 1 or better. So, but then we have 7 and 8 chilling with 2 and 3. So those last 2 spots are gonna be up for grabs, and those are gonna probably be the most interesting. See who can sneak in, and try and contend with those top 6 at least.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Chimp is pretty solid to get that 7th or higher. So
really, it's gonna be 8th. Yeah,
a tough spot for the 8th. Ed Uzi's down there with 1 and 4. That could easily pull off a bunch of wins in a row. So it's going to be an interesting finish for the bottom, but I think that top half is pretty solidified.
Oh yeah. 100%.
But okay, yeah, I think that's it for this week. Any parting words? Go check out Ogalbina's channel and the next week's team builder, or not team builder, power ranking. It's going to be up on his channel. I don't know if I'm going to be doing any more coach power rankings on my channel or coaching interviews. Hopefully I can get to some soon. I just been busy with work. But yeah, any last words?
No, go sit over there and drop a sub so you can see the next one's up on my channel next week. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Until next time. Later, guys.